Welcome to the Smoking Rope Podcast. Today is episode 32, and I am your host, Ryan Basore. Super excited to have on a guest that's well known across the country now, activist, entrepreneur, hip hop producer, and with the company's Reform and the Weldon Project, Weldon Angelos. Thanks for being on, Weldon.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
Yep, super excited. I wanted to introduce Tom Beller over at Real Leaf Solutions, Northern Michigan, and we're all under weather advisories here, even Weldon out of Utah. But how's it going up there in Kalkaska, Tom?
Ironically, it's a beautiful blue sky day up in Northern Michigan. So really excited about today's guest. Weldon, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Tom. And
yeah,
then
man,
Kevin.
Excited about it.
Cool. Kevin at Truu Cannabis in Lansing, just around the corner. Kevin, what's happening today?
Not much, man. Just trying to get the snow cleared, get the parking lots open so the guys can get into work and get our mail delivered and all that good stuff. But other than that, everything's good, man.
Cool. Well, I wanted a little bit longer introduction for those that don't know about Weldon. In 2004, Weldon was sentenced to 55 years in prison for basically over 3.5 ounces of cannabis. You know, they definitely targeted him, and when he didn't take a plea deal, they trump up charges, as most of us know that listen to this. But after 13 years in 2016, President Obama granted Weldon clemency. He had a lot of support, which we'll hear about from a lot of different well-known people. And he was out and off and running, and has done a lot of work in the last 4 years, in my opinion, more than anyone up in Washington for criminal justice reform and the partnerships that he's created. And just being up there advocating, putting politics aside, left or right, whatever it takes to get people out of jail and to quit arresting people. So I first met Weldon after I launched Redemption, and I believe I reached out to you and just saw what you were doing. I saw Reform, your cannabis brand, had kind of hit it off, and Weldon has done a lot to help me. He's the tip of the spear when it comes to criminal justice reform. And for what I'm trying to do, we're all learning from Weldon. So besides that, and he also got pardoned, at the end of this year by President Trump. So what a big deal. So with that, I'm gonna let Weldon talk about him, tell us the story, talk about himself. We'll jump in here and there, but today's show, I really just want to hear this amazing story, and hopefully we see Weldon in Michigan soon. So thanks, Weldon.
Yeah, thanks, man. Love to come out there and see you. And I've never been to Michigan except to get off a plane and get on another one. So yeah, my journey through this space started with Dr. Dre's The Mic. I was a young kid, when that album came out, I wanted to experiment with cannabis. I thought it was cool. They're wearing the weed leaf, working with the people I was listening to, all the people at Death Row Records, from Snoop to Tupac's group and everyone. And because I'm originally from Salt Lake City, I was bringing those acts out to Salt Lake City, and it wasn't liked. So the local authorities did not want that culture, the weed smoking hip hop culture out here. I had relocated to LA, when I was 15 to get in the industry. And so when I started bringing Snoop and Mac Dre and all these people out here, it put the crosshairs on me. They sent an informant, some guy I had known when I was growing up, and he purchased a few $100 worth of cannabis on 3 occasions into a 20-count federal indictment where I was facing 105 years of mandatory imprisonment. It was ridiculous. It was a nightmare. And as we went through the process, we learned that they look as an opportunity. Authorities usually don't spend millions of dollars investigating someone $1,000. The music people I was working with, and hoping that putting pressure on me would lead to something big and a career boost and all that stuff. And so when that didn't happen, they wanted to make an example out of me. And so they superseded my indictment 2 more times, added enough time to send me away for, a couple natural lives. And I went to trial. They even trumped up a couple counts where they fabricated, to go to trial. I wasn't willing to accept a 15-year plea offer for a $300 marijuana sale. And that's what they were offering me, 15 years for $300 worth of weed. And I couldn't do it. And most of the charges they were holding over my head were fabricated. Their stuff, it wasn't true. So I went to trial and I lost some, won some, ended up with a mandatory 55-year sentence. And what surprised me and my defense team was that the judge, who was a Federalist Society judge, basically the judges Trump was appointing. So he was very conservative, very tough on crime. He looked at this case in this story and was appalled by what the government was forcing him to impose. The 55 years was mandatory. He had no discretion, so he had no choice. All he could do was go down kicking and screaming, but he did go down kicking and screaming. And so he did something unique that has never been done in the history of the federal system. He called on the president who appointed him to commute my sentence as he was sentencing me, because that had never been done before, and certainly not from a very tough on crime conservative judge. People listened, and a lot of people who we wouldn't have expected to listen to before, opened their eyes up to this system. And my judge authored a 67-page opinion stating reasons why this sentence is unconstitutional and why I should have received a sentence of maybe 6 years at most. And that was even too long, in my opinion, for this. However, a few years later, I stepped down from the bench and became my #1 advocate. Rand Paul and a few others, along with those in the entertainment industry I worked with, like Snoop Dogg, Alicia Keys, Bonnie Raitt, and a group of former DOJ officials. We had probably about 165 former federal judges, federal prosecutors, U.S. attorneys general, and a number of state authorities who also felt that this sentence was ridiculous. But what was unique about my case was not only my judge who had spoken out about the sentence, but was because the way I was charged. So authorities set up these controlled buys. The judge noted that if they would have arrested me the very first time, I would have gotten probation and been out. But instead of arresting me, if they felt I was so dangerous to society, why wouldn't they arrest me right when it happened? Instead, they kept allowing it to happen multiple times to stack my punishment. So then they could come at me with, a century of incarceration and say, now you have to either cooperate or you have to take this very lengthy plea offer, or we're going to send you to prison and you'll never come home. And so that is what made my case different. It was for such a small amount of a drug that's harmless, and it was so minor. And so people looked at this like, okay, something's wrong. And what else this caused is it caused the Koch brothers to look at the system even more, and resulted in them getting more involved in criminal justice reform. And so now we have all these senators and DOJ officials. Now the Koch brothers, who are, typically thought of as being, super right wing, were also calling on President Obama to intervene. And I'm thankful to all the support I had and the pressure that the Senate was putting on the president. Obama took steps to secure my release. And in 2016, I was released. And, as I was leaving, I had the option, do I want to try to get back in music and build the career they took from me? Or do I want to, help the people I left behind? There was a number of people when I was leaving that were looking at me like, you can't get out and not do something about this. You were given this unique platform and a network that you got to take advantage of. And one of them was Luke Scarmazzo, who's serving a 22-year prison sentence for following state law in California. And he was one of the ones that were like, man, please don't forget about me. When you get out, I need you to be our voice. And so when I got out, I had to make that decision. Do I want to put all this behind me and try to build my career back and make up for everything that the government has taken from me? Or do I want to dedicate it to, stopping what happened to me from happening to other people? And so I chose the latter and, started working with a Republican administration. President Trump's administration had asked me to come out and join their prison reform summit. And, we built a relationship and a rapport with his staff. And I helped them work on what's called the First Step Act. That was the first comprehensive federal criminal justice reform since 1970. And it reformed a number of drug mandatory minimums, including the statute that allowed prosecutors to seek and give me a 55-year sentence. That statute's gone. It's been reformed, and so prosecutors don't have that lethal tool anymore. And it also changed the mandatory life for 3 strikes for the 3 drug offenses, and a number of unjust enhancements. And so while it wasn't, the biggest reform and what we all wanted, it was a first step, and that's what it's called. And so I was proud to be a part of that historic piece of legislation. And we also worked with the White House on clemencies, and I'll get more to that in a minute. But after the First Step Act passed in December of 2018, I knew it didn't affect people in prison for purely cannabis cases. Now, it affected people who received certain enhancements, certain firearm enhancements, and other, cases like that. It did nothing for people serving time for purely cannabis. And so that is when I decided to launch Project Mission Green. And the idea was actually birthed probably in the late spring of 2018. But when we passed the First Step Act, we launched this nonprofit initiative so we could focus on those serving time for cannabis offenses, because no nonprofit at the time was doing that. No one was focusing on, in my opinion, the most deserving group of offender. If you have people making millions of dollars off this, but you got select individuals serving, long sentences for the same thing and violating the same federal statute that these corporations are violating, this is unjust. And I felt like, the president needed to know about this. I felt like Congress needed to know about this. And so we launched Project Mission Green with that goal in mind. And through that initiative, we were able to secure the release of a number of people serving lengthy sentences for cannabis, including Luke's co-defendant, Ricardo Montes. We weren't able to get Luke out for various reasons, but we got his co-defendant out. And just recently in January, we were able to help secure the release of probably 9 or 10 people serving, life in prison for cannabis. We worked with Alice John and others at the White House on highlighting these individual cases. And so we are now to launch a coalition to help pass the MORE Act. And we're bringing something to the table that's not there already, which is conservative support. And so we're really excited to get ready to announce this coalition as well.
And that's an incredible story, Weldon. I know there's even more to it. I've got so many questions we're not gonna have time for today. But I think about like me being in your shoes. Like, what was it like, and how long did it take for you to like get over maybe the anger, or like when you first went in to prison? And was it like immediately the whole time, right when you went in, you're like from day one, I'm getting myself out of here, or was it what was that process like?
Yeah, day one, I hit the ground running. I was working on getting out. I didn't have time to be angry and bitter. It was a nightmare because, I watched everything I had just disappear. My career, once in a lifetime career. Not many people can make it in the music industry. And, I was right there with a multi-million-dollar deal, and it was taken from me. I had 2 young sons who, when I got out, they were grown men, had facial hair and everything. It was weird. So, I have a 13-year gap in my memory where, it goes from 2002 to 2016, and, nothing's there but prison and riots and just crazy shit. You know what I mean? And so, while I wanted to be mad and bitter, I didn't have the luxury to do that, because I knew that no one wants to get me out more than me. The lawyers, the advocates, they all have an agenda. They want to change law. So they looked at me as a vehicle to change Supreme Court precedent, to change federal statutes. But I just wanted to come home. And I seen that my agenda and their agenda was different. I had some very strong actual innocence claims. I had Brady violations where evidence was suppressed, fabricated testimony. I had so much good stuff. All they wanted to focus on was 8th Amendment mandatory minimums. And so I kind of was a victim of my own publicity and everything that I had going for my case, end up working for me, but also against me. And I think, but I wouldn't have changed anything. If I could go back and do it over, I wouldn't do it, because so much good has come from, what happened to me and what my judge did and the laws we were able to change because of that.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. It's stuff that's never been done before. So I enjoy it when I get a chance to talk to you or listen. And I was curious, and we've had like some pretty big, as far as knowledgeable guests on the national level on the show, the director of Marijuana Policy Project, the National Cannabis Industry Association. But even talking with them and then talking with you, you're in the room. So what's it like? Tell us a little experience about. I know you worked with Cory Booker, and then, but what's it like going up to the White House and talking about marijuana and criminal justice reform? It's just it's a surreal thought for me.
Yeah, so I think I've been to a lot of people's houses. I've been to Snoop Dogg's. I've been to a lot of places and been around a lot of famous people, but I think nothing compares to walking in that White House as a formerly incarcerated person, as someone with a felony conviction, going in the White House and then listening to my views on criminal justice and what they should be doing. And so I think that was probably one of the best experiences I've ever had in my life. And not only going one time, but coming back and back and back and keeping this communication going and speaking to people like Ivanka Trump and having them call me and ask me things and talk about cases and asking for cases to bring to their attention. And so it was amazing, I think. And me and Cory Booker, when I first got out, I went straight to DC, and the first two people I went and visited was Cory Booker and Mike Lee. We had a press conference, and they treated me like a friend. It wasn't like, oh yeah, keeping their distance, and they gave me hugs and here's my cell number. And so we literally, I can text message Mike Lee. We text message all the time. And, Cory Booker is a friend. And it's an amazing feeling now. Look where we are. Like 10 years ago, this would never have been possible. We could never have went to the White House and never even reached out to members of Congress. They didn't want to hear from us. And so now, we've come so far, and I feel like we're really close to finally putting an end to not only cannabis prohibition, but the war on drugs overall.
Hey, Weldon, this is Kevin Pybus over at Truu Cannabis in Lansing. Just had a question for you about what role did the local and state police have in your case for it to have gotten pushed up to the federal level? I know that in Ryan's situation, we had an attorney general here that really had it out for him and kind of pressed it up to the next level because his hands were locked as to what he could do. What role did the local and state police have for your case?
So they had everything to do with it. I was prosecuted initially by the Metro Gang Unit, which was a drug and gang unit task force. And they investigated drug and gang related activity. And the individual who was an informant, he had caught a case, he had caught an armed meth trafficking case. He had just gotten out of prison for cocaine distribution and other violent offenses. And he was a gang member. And so, he wanted to get immunity, and he had worked out a deal with the Metro Gang Unit. The Metro Gang Unit, he had brought to their attention, I have information on a murder or a couple murders. I got information on, cartels bringing meth into the state. And they were like, yeah, we don't care. What about Weldon Angelos? Can you get Weldon Angelos? That's what we want. He's like, well, I got a murder and meth. And they're like, no, we want Weldon. He was like, yeah. He's like, okay, that'll be easy. What do you want? And he was like, marijuana? He was like, okay. I mean, even to this day, he's a scumbag. But my documentary crew interviewed him, and they reached out to him, and he says even to this day he couldn't understand why they wanted me over a murder. Like, come on, man. And people bringing carloads of meth into the state. They wanted little old me, and I mean, it's clear why they wanted me. They were hoping prosecuting me would lead to the arrest of people like Snoop Dogg, or it would also keep, and it did get rid of that bridge between the hip hop industry and the state, which I was bringing here. And I think they looked at me like I was bringing Ebola into Utah. And so, they felt like they had to keep me out.
Man, oh man. And I always talk about that. People think of the federal government and all this is like out in DC, but they live among us. They're human. And like with me, you get a DEA agent that doesn't like you. It's personal. They're just humans. So you mentioned the documentary. Let's tell me about that. What's going on with your documentary?
Yeah, so the moment I got out, we started filming. I had started writing a documentary from prison and a book. And so when I got out, I wanted to get my story out there, and more than just promoting myself, I wanted to expose what happened to me, and bigger than all the music and celebrity crap, I wanted to expose the agent who was the Metro Gang Unit officer, Jason Mazeron, and the informant who set me up on 2 charges that they know weren't true, but they did it anyway to put pressure on me. And so they concocted these charges that were never in the police reports. These are things that were fabricated 6 months after the transactions. When they arrested me and saw that I owned a legal firearm, they go back into the report and say, oh, he must have had it back then. And they change the reports. We got 2 versions of these police reports, and other officers there debriefed this guy. Only one officer later changed his report to say the informant mentioned a firearm. And so I want to expose what happened to me, not just the sentence, not just the music, but those 2 individuals who are the villains in my documentary.
When's that going to be coming out?
We're hoping this summer. We're trying to shoot it as a docu-series, and we're in talks with CNN Films and HBO Max, and we have everybody in the film from Senator Cory Booker to Snoop Dogg to Mike Lee to President Trump. And, we filmed at the White House, and we sort of been everywhere. And we actually worked on Clemency's on camera. And so we actually were, filming everything, this Clemency push that happened at the last minute. And the people we were able to get out, including Michael Harris, the co-founder of Death Row Records. We were working with Snoop and other people on getting some of these clemencies, and we were able to film the process so people can see what it looked like, and how stressful it was and how hard it was. And for all that work to only get a dozen people out, was a letdown. I mean, we were happy and celebratory, but at the same time, it was a letdown because there's so many more in there that need relief.
Yeah, we talk about a lot about that with my foundation and the people on this show, just talking about, hopefully, like, we just got, and you helped early on, and we're a part of the whole Michael Thompson that getting out here in Michigan. And so much human capital and time and energy went into getting Michael out from a lot of people. And here we are, but in Michigan, it's like a momentum builder. So we're hoping that we're at the tip of the iceberg, and the momentum's just going to shoot it forward, and we'll be set on that. But what I want to talk about, which is it's pretty cool. We both came up, obviously you came up with your brand, your cannabis brand first. I did second, but I didn't know about yours yet. And similar names and a little bit similar concept. And for when I did it, it was still, this is obviously a passion for me. It's obviously a passion for you, but it's what's kind of funny now is that, sex doesn't sell cannabis. Now it's social justice and activism in 2020, 21. So just the way it's all turned, and to have other people out there like you across the country that are doing it for the right reasons is exciting. So tell me about Reform, and tell me about when you got it started, how you came up with it, and kind of the last couple of years of that process, and where you're able to be going.
Yeah, and so when we were working on individuals' releases, like Luke and other people, I polled all of them, like, what else can we do to be helping you? And I was in the process of launching my own brand. A lot of people in the industry and some of my entertainer friends were prodding me, like, you lost 13 years of your life for $900 worth of cannabis. You should be in the industry. And so I'm like, okay, well, help me get my own brand. And so we started working on it. But as I got further into it, and speaking to those still incarcerated, they were like, what we could use is financial support while we're in prison. And so what I did was I turned my brand into a cause-based brand. I put the word reefer and reform together for Reform, and turned it into a cause-based brand where we dedicate proceeds to individuals' commissary accounts. Because I know what it's like, and I'm sure you know what it's like being in prison, and the phone calls are expensive, the commissary is expensive, and we both know prison feeds you enough to keep you alive, not full. And so, you can't survive just on what the prison provides you. And then phone calls and emails, you got to pay for everything. I mean, you got to pay per minute as you're writing an email. And so some people have to choose between hygiene products and calling their families. And so, we want to make sure they can depend on a check every month from us. And whatever money they get from their little job or whatever, they don't have to worry about only living off that. And so I launched Reform to also help them while we're working to get them out of jail. We're also trying to help them, make them comfortable while they're in jail. And that was sort of the idea behind it. And, we went and, got a Snoop song for it, and, created a bunch of content. We created the brand in 2018. We didn't launch And so it was definitely a rough start. But we did, sell out immediately. Every run that we did have, the dispensaries were eating them up. They were buying everything out so fast. But with the drought in California and the prices going up and the COVID, we had to pull back, let everything kind of calm down, and we're going to relaunch in a month.
That is exciting. Hopefully, we see you all over the country, I'm sure.
Yeah, we're looking to launch nationally, because a Kush Supply packaging company on this, and they are providing the packaging for us at cost and on credit, and they want to get behind us to make sure we can be successful nationally.
And I have to talk to them myself. We talked about that. So what do you see happening? Obviously, the Democrats one in Georgia took over the Senate. That was a big groundbreaking happening for cannabis, hopefully reform. What do you think is going to happen? Is it going to be 280E and Safe Banking Act, MORE Act, decrim? You've got as good as idea on anybody. What's your gut, and what are you thinking on that?
Yeah, we're really pushing for the MORE Act. What's lacking with the MORE Act right now? The Democrats took the Senate, they got the House, the White House. They could introduce it, and that was the biggest roadblock. Before this, Mitch McConnell was there, and he wasn't going to introduce it. So it was just all symbolic. Now that the Democrats control Congress, they can get it introduced. But what it's missing is Republicans. We don't have enough Republicans to pass the bill. And so our job is, given that I have a relationship with, a number of Republicans, because of the efforts to get me out of jail, a number of conservatives, we are now trying to get them on board with a version of the MORE Act that can actually pass the Senate. And so, the first person we're going to start, Mike Lee, in this coalition that can help get conservatives on board. And I think there's no one better than Mike Lee to make a conservative and constitutional argument for ending the ban on cannabis.
Yeah, because he's a part of
and we may get the banking bill first. Yeah, we may get the banking bill first if the MORE Act can't pass, but I'm hopeful that we can get it all done in one bill.
So you think cannabis could be the thing that actually brings together the such a divided legislature? I mean, I certainly hope so.
I do. Yeah, we're working on it, so I'm hoping that happens. There's a good argument. I mean, the MORE Act is a states' rights bill, and I think a lot of the Republicans, that's sort of going to be the pitch. Let the states have their own marijuana laws. Let the states decide.
Like that. Hey, Weldon, was thinking about it, like what I'm obviously, that I'm looking to get pardoned. I'm hopeful with the Biden administration and my relationship with our RAG here in Michigan, but you got pardoned and you get your rights back. I grew up with guns, and I don't go near them. I was in my first bunkie was had 15 years for 3 guns and a felony with 3 guns. So what have you done since? Have you done anything new? Have you doing anything since you're off and clear and free?
Initially pardoned, I felt like I was exonerated, and so I was going around bragging like, it's like it never happened. And then I get a letter from the DOJ, and they tell me their legal opinion: you're still a convicted felon. You just don't have disabilities and you don't have collateral consequences. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And so I looked up the Supreme Court definition. Now, initially in the 1800s, the Supreme Court said a pardon is a full exoneration. It's an expunge your record. So, but the Supreme Court walked away from that definition, and now it's like there's a hybrid version. Basically, it's not an exoneration, but you're not convicted of it anymore. But it's the DOJ's opinion is even further away from that. And so So I guess according to the DOJ, I still have to write on the applications that I'm a felon, but I've been pardoned. And the good thing for me is I've always been a gun fanatic. I love guns. I used to own a lot of guns, ever since I was, a little kid, always went shooting. And so I'm happy to have my gun rights back. I haven't exercised that right yet because I'm still paranoid. You know what I mean? I'm like afraid to go even apply for one because I'm scared they're going to rush in and arrest me. So I'm just giving it time, letting the pardon, show up on the, whatever the BCI and all that stuff before, I definitely want to go shooting, and I'm looking forward to being able to protect my family, not, having Mason in a baseball bat. So it's definitely amazing. And I think that's the biggest point. We should all be able to have a firearm at home. I don't think they should. I think a lifetime ban is unconstitutional. I just don't think, the Supreme Court and the conservative Supreme Court is why we're here in the first place. And I think, that someone, there might be, an argument there for a lifetime ban, but I think people like you and me, I think a lifetime ban is unconstitutional.
Yeah, I agree. I always wonder where the NRA's been here in Michigan supporting all. I was in Michigan. We got rulings, in other states that if you're a marijuana patient, a cannabis patient, you can't own a firearm. I mean, it's a plant, and we should be able to grow it and smoke it, and
you can drink beer.
Yeah, and
yeah,
take
you can
opiates.
drink beer and own a firearm.
Yeah, take opiates,
you can do
prescription,
all
everything
that.
else. And let's be honest, I grew up,
Yep.
pretty deep in the country. There's a lot of gun shooting and whiskey drinking going on, by people that might they think the other way on the cannabis. So it's pretty. We got to get that changed.
So I know you're probably scared. I know when I got out, I was very paranoid about going around anyone that owned a firearm in their home. Because when I got out, my brother-in-law, I stayed with my sister for a few weeks. He's a fireman and owns guns. I was scared to death to even be in the house. And even if you find a bullet and you pick it up and throw it away, you're going to federal prison if they find out. And so it's terrible living under that fear because you have a felony that you can easily catch another felony and go to prison for a long time if it ever happens. So
yeah, when I got out, I was like checking the back of my car or truck. Like, did anyone plant a shell in there or anything like that? I was just so paranoid because another one of my buddies in prison was I think 3 years for 3 empty bullet cases in a safe, like that, where like he collected for some reason. They were after his brother, but they got him, and there you go. So there was just all these wild stories. But yeah, super paranoid. I ask people when I get in cars, you don't have a gun in your glove box, do you? That type of stuff, because it's the real deal.
yeah.
Yep. So, man, well, we could talk about this forever. But I know we got some hard outs, and I really appreciate being on the show. I wanted to go ahead, and I usually let everybody say goodbye, and let Tom and Kevin, ask any final questions, and we'll have everybody get going, and we're gonna be real excited to see what happens in the future, though, with what you're doing. So, Kevin, any final thoughts?
Yeah, Weldon, I just wanted to say, that we really appreciate everything that you're doing for this movement. Because of you, this movement has generated a lot of attention, and the domino effect is happening across the country. We've seen it here in Michigan with the Michael Thompson case, and we're seeing it more and more every day. I appreciate you being on the show. I wish you luck moving forward, and be safe out there. Okay, buddy?
Tom.
Hey,
Yeah,
Weldon.
thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's really nice to meet you, man. Thank you for everything and your sacrifice, and just wishing you great success in the future, and hoping we can maybe all collaborate someday and raise some money through some Michigan has event licenses, so it'd be a good idea to possibly work on raising some funds that way too, and awareness.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Yeah, we do have.
Appreciate it. I definitely, have my eyes on Michigan.
Yeah, we do have event licenses, like Tom said. Like,
What were you saying,
yeah.
Ryan?
Oh, we have event licenses, like Tom said. That's a great fit. You know, we have cannabis concerts are allowed here once COVID's lifted, so that might be a good way to come on into Michigan. But any final thoughts, Weldon, as far as what can people do? How do they find you? What any call to action on stuff that you're doing with your activism?
Yeah, definitely. If anyone wants to support us, they can go to theweldonproject.org and sign up as a volunteer, or follow us on Instagram at Project Mission Green. We're currently right now working with the Biden administration on general clemencies for all people with cannabis felony, whether you're free or in prison. The other day, we submitted a letter that was signed by industry individuals, advocacy organizations, asking Joe. Sorry, I got cut off there. So asking Joe Biden to issue a proclamation pardoning anyone either incarcerated or, you know, with a felony conviction for a cannabis conviction. And, you know, we're hopeful that this administration is going to move in the right direction on this. So we're working closely with them and hoping they'll do the right thing.
It's awesome. Yeah, anyone that's listening out here, we have a lot of industry people in Michigan. Go follow Mission Green, Weldon Angelos, read about what's happening. He's doing it on the national level, and we're able to learn a lot and follow his lead, and hopefully can help support everything he's doing. And you know, we'll see what's happened in the next couple of years, and look back on this. I'm excited to see the progress. So with that, thanks for everybody, and we'll see you next week.